So I just saved myself a lot of time. Previously in the videos, I've made the huge big video, then put it into an editor just to put that in front of it, when all I had to do was what I just did, which is play it in the screen, and I'm done. And I don't really need to do it, but I do it anyway. So this is a Darktable video about getting good skin tone, the various modules that impact skin, because if you take a portrait, whether it's indoors or outdoors, there's always that, well, how do I make this better? And also, what can I do in Darktable that makes it more work in something like GIMP or less work in something like GIMP in terms of getting rid of blemishes, in terms of smoothing, in terms of all that stuff. So let's talk about that. Firstly, something super important I've covered in other videos is when you're doing a shoot, whether it's indoor or outdoor, if you carry around something like this or some kind of a gray card that you take in the shoot, then all you got to do is edit this photo, use the spot imaging tool, the spot white balance tool. Let's do it. So I go into white balance, I go to spot, and it never works the first time, drives me nuts. And I select one of these from the gray column, and the white balance of the picture automatically is right. I think this is this is perfect white balance. This is white balance. No, that is perfect white balance. That is perfect white balance. I don't know. Yeah, that would be normal sun white balance. This is kind of warmer. And I usually go with either that one or that one, just whatever looks best. I just sample it. Then what you do is you go out back to the Lightroom, you copy the white balance, and then you select all your other images and you paste the white balance. So that's a good trick. And in fact, this is my discard pile. In fact, this is one of my discard piles. This is the ones that I thought I might work on. And the reason they look so good is that I've worked on one image all the way through, and then I've copied everything from that image and applied it to all of the images, so that I'm kind of working with just good looking images. So we're going to talk about skin. Let's choose an image. Actually, let's choose one of the ones that made it all the way to Final Cut. What's my favorite? They're all my favorite. Let's go with that one. So Control D, I'm going to clone it. And then I'm going to discard the entire stack, and we'll work on it from scratch. So this is a Nikon D800. So it's a 36 megapixel file. There's a lot of detail. Clearly this is somebody with great makeup, great skin. This is Janelle. But still, we're just because she's close to having perfect skin doesn't mean we can't use this as a good demonstration. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this kind of to where I want it, what I usually do. Because there's a white background, it's a little bit hard to use the histogram here, but I want to take the exposure up, because I'm not using a base curve. I've talked about a million times. And that whole, what I just did about copying the stack to other things, if you look at my other images, there's one where the thumbnails includes a sports team. That's the one I talk about workflow. It's workflow in the title. So I'm going to push this up to about there, and then I'm going to use the tone curve to pop the skin up a little bit, just until I'm getting a little bit of overexposure, tiny bit of S curve, And this red here, you can push this about a stop past overexposed without losing the detail of the hair and making it all weird. So let's get rid of that and see where I actually want this. This is my general feel for the image. I want it about there. Yeah, I want it about there. So what impacts skin? Well, clearly white balance really impacts skin, and it's where the eye feels the most weird about skin. So if the white balance is off, then that is really noticeable. So like if this is even a few clicks up, a few mouse wheels up, it starts to turn really green. So that's from 1.008 to 1.058, and we're already seeing a green. So if your image is looking a little bit green, and my Nikon D3S is often pushing out kind of greeny images, then just a 1.2 or 1.23 on that will just warm it up really well. That's too warm. And in this case, it was really good because we used that white balance card. Oh no, I didn't, did I? Because I cleared the stack. But flash white balancing on Nikon's pretty darn good, and this was flashes. So it's pretty much right on. The temperature, let's do some extremes. We can go warmer or colder. Again, it's something that needs to be done pretty subtly. It's more, if you go past a few clicks, it actually looks more like an effect than an adjustment. So let's go back to what the camera had. It was pretty darn good because it was flash. The camera was set to white balance flash, and it was using flash. So there's two real things. There's coloring of skin, and there's the texture of skin, and you can do a lot with both of them in Darktable. So coloring of skin, this is also pretty useful, and I sometimes use this instead of white balance just because it's so visual. It's so easy to just dial something in, either a correction, which can be a slight warming, you know, if you just put that, these two dots represent the highlights and the shadows. So if you just move that white dot up into the orange a little bit, you're warming the image. And then of course you've got the split tone kind of look by playing around with the shadows. Sharpening definitely affects the texture of skin, but not a crazy amount. Not a crazy amount. For this image, I'll probably want it just around there. Contrast does not really affect either, but I usually add that to a photo. Saturation definitely affects the coloring of a skin. But the real fine-tuned, crazy way to affect the coloring of a skin is the color zones, and the crazy way to affect the texture of the skin is actually the equalizer and local contrast. So let's play with this. Now I find with skin tones, the way to really home in, or hone in if you're American. We from Europe, we say home in, like a homing pigeon. Here people say hone in. We can argue about that. You can vote in the comments. Here I can just push the saturation here, and it's affecting the skin but not the background, which is unsaturated, not the hair, not the cloth. It's actually a really good little way to separate out skin tones in a complex image and adjust either the saturation or the lightness. And I kind of like it in a photo like this. I'll just take one of these highlights. Let's take one of these highlights, which is around the same place, and I'll just pop the saturation up. Why is it being weird? I'll just pop that saturation up as locally as I can to that spot, and it just gives it a little bit more warmth. Velvia affects skin a lot. I think that's what it's made for. But sometimes it feels like it's a bit of a hammer rather than a scalpel. Like in this image, I don't think I like what it's doing to the eye makeup. It's really popping the eye makeup to the point that I don't like it. So, I mean, I play a lot. I play a lot. I come in here and I try okay, what's the difference between selecting hue and saturation? Well, selecting hue is really saying everything with the same color tone, with the same color, adjust that, which in this case is doing the same effect. What I find though, strangely, the more complex the image, the more the saturation as a select by really helps me isolate changes to skin tone. So I'm going to do that there. I like that. So that's about it in terms of color. Let's look at what's more fun, which is the texture. Denoise definitely impacts the texture, often I consider in a negative way. It can be used as a smoothing, but it also makes everything very slow because it's very heavy on resources. Yeah, so denoise of the various things. I've got another video on denoise, my thoughts on denoise, and if you want to see other Darktable stuff, I kind of enjoy this, especially when people like and subscribe. So I kind of enjoy this, so please like and subscribe. That gives me some feedback that this is worth doing. And if there's specific things you'd like me to focus on, just let me know. I don't know Darktable inside out, but I do like to just sit around and play with these sliders, so I'm absolutely willing to do that work. What I'm not willing to do is answer a call from my ex-wife right now, though. So let's look at texture, because this is where it gets really interesting. So local contrast is our version of clarity. Clarity creates a pop on the midtones, and clearly, oh, I don't even want to do that to poor Janelle, put it all the way up there. The more clarity you use, the more you are highlighting imperfections. But going the other way can be a quick and dirty way to smooth out skin. If you want that kind of, it's a very simple kind of glow effect. And now we see the skin is absolutely evened out. But it still has texture. It's not like, it doesn't look like somebody's pasted over it. That's actually a little bit much, but please call me as soon as you can. Thank you, will do. But say within the minus, I usually live within the -20 range to 0 if I'm softening. But let's use that just to soften this a little bit, because what I want to go for here is that kind of fashionista, kind of Vogue cover look. And the real tool for that is the equalizer. So very often the equalizer is just used for a little bit of denoise. If you lift the tail end here, you're effectively denoising an image. The presets are fairly often used. They're pretty good, like Sharpen. You can, if you use those presets, you can start to understand what's going on here. So like Sharpening is taking the fine things, like fine, like the hair is fine, the dots in this fabric are fine, some skin stuff is fine, but most skin texture actually is going to live around here, and then the smoother, flatter chunks of sameness live way down at this other end of the spectrum. So what I do recommend is, I highly recommend you just grab an image and go in and start moving things around here. Like, what happens if you take the middle and tank it? Well, the whole damn thing goes completely blurry, so that is not something we're interested in doing. What about if we peak it? Brutal sharpening. So that is that is uber sharpening the midtones, which is where our skin kind of lives. So obviously we want something a little bit more subtle. What happens if we spike the coarse? So that's too much, but look what it's doing. It's kind of interesting. It's giving us a pop on the highlights, which actually, when you look at a Vogue type image, is exactly what it has. So what about if let's double click to make it go away. What about if we just do that a little bit more subtly? And just play around here. Scroll wheel changes the size of the curve. And my experience is you kind of want a curve to be smooth. If you have jagged edges in this curve, the resulting image looks really weird. So we're going for smooth. And now around here, we're getting into the realm of the kind of pore size. So if we pull these down, we're effectively unsharpening just the range in the photo that relates to imperfections in the skin. And then if we pop that up, we're kind of doing possibly affecting eyelashes, possibly affecting hair, but just that little bit of playing I think is too much. But I mean, here's the difference. We've gone from the raw image to too much. But you see where I'm going with this? We've got this nice kind of studio-ish, fashionista-ish kind of glow in the highlights, smoothing. Basically, it looks photoshopped. But all we're doing is creating a curve that we can clone and apply to hundreds of images at the same time, as opposed to going in with Photoshop or GIMP and painfully dealing with either creating, like splitting into layers and dealing with imperfections. We are using this, I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff. I want a little bit more of that glow and softening in the middle. And then pulling up the bottom is taking the noise at various, I don't actually know, it says noisy, but you know, to be honest, for me what this does is it reduces the sharpness of the particles of the same size. But you know what? The way I look at it, sometimes it doesn't matter if I have read the manual, and it doesn't matter if I understand this. There's not a whole lot can beat just coming in here and doing it. So that's kind of giving me the effect I want. If you look at the shoulder here, especially, I'm going to that nice softer glow. But what I don't like is that it is blurring the eyes, and sharp eyes are really important to me. Maybe even the lips too. So let's do, I'm going to create a mask, and I'm going to put inverse on, which means anything I select is not impacted. Not impacted by the module. So if I draw an eye there and draw an eye there, that removes. And my eyes are sharp again. So that's not exactly where I want it, but it is definitely better than where it was. Let's see what I ended up with when I look at the images that actually made it to production. Was that tough? What was that? Equalizer curve. Oh, it was kind of that. So a bit of a dip there, and the bottom coming up to meet it, as opposed to that. So it might not be as pronounced on a YouTube video, but it's the difference between a lot of work in GIMP and a little work in GIMP in terms of healing. So that's just playing around with skin color and skin texture. If you have any other tricks that you use for skin, please let me know in the comments. Please like and please like and subscribe. It makes this more fun. And let me know what you think. Thank you. Bye.